The summer after I graduated from high school, I did this thing. I taught this thing called Totus Tuus. I was a missionary for Totus Tuus. You may be familiar with that program. It goes around during the summer. So you're on a 4-person team and you travel around to a bunch of different parishes and you put on like a week-long Bible camp for the little kids in the parish. We have it here every summer, so you're probably kind of familiar with it at least. But that's what I did. Summer after I graduated from high school, I went and taught Totus Tuus. And it was a beautiful experience because, for one, I was just able to go around all across the diocese and see all these different parishes. I went all the way down to the southeast corner of Kansas. I got to see Coffeyville, Pittsburgh, Parsons, Chanute, all those places down in the southeast corner of Kansas. I had a place south of Wichita, Mulvane. I don't know if you heard of that place. I also had Colwich, which is a little bit northwest of Wichita. So it was just a great experience. It was also a very important summer for me because that was a summer when I really began to, and my heart really began to change and to see that I could actually be a priest. At that time, I was very much fighting it, but seeing all the different parishes, being able to serve all these different people and all these different parishes all across our diocese, I began to see yeah, maybe I actually could do this. I didn't know they were about to give me an entire county of my own, but that's a different point. I was just like, I can actually do this. I could do this. Also then when I went to seminary and I started studying to become a priest, I got sent to Northwest Missouri to Conception Seminary College. So that's a little bit different up there. I then got sent to Mount St. Mary's, which is out in Maryland. It's very different out there. And then I got sent for another 3 years to Chicago to school, and it's very different there as well. While I was in Chicago, I also had several weeks where I was sent down to Mexico to do some language immersion. So I was down in Michoacan, Mexico, studying Spanish. I also then spent a semester in Israel and Palestine. The beautiful thing is that in all of these different places, I just had a very, very robust, very thorough exposure to the universal church. I was given a great concrete experience of the Catholicity of the church. I was just literally everywhere in all parts of the world. Everywhere I went, things looked a little different. And even if you just go over to Chicago, things are a little bit different, but it's the same thing. Languages may be different if you go to Mexico. Languages may be different, but it's the same thing. Everywhere that I went, we all professed the same faith. I don't speak Hebrew, but when you're in Israel at Mass, they're saying the same creed that we say, just in a different language. It's the same faith. Everywhere that I went, I could receive the Eucharist. I could go to confession. You just found the door that says English on it. But you could go to confession anywhere in the world. You could receive the Eucharist anywhere in the world. Everywhere that I went, all the little Catholic churches that I'd walk into, they'd have a picture on the wall of this guy dressed in purple, and then next to him, this guy dressed in white. And it's like they too have a bishop, and they too are saluting Pope Francis, right? Everywhere that I went, it was just this very concrete experience of the Catholic Church on full display. Okay, we've been talking about the church for a couple of weeks now, but we're really trying to dig into that. Just again, the simple question. Every Sunday we stand up and we say, I believe in one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. Great, but what does it mean? Okay, what does that actually mean to say that I believe that? Because we all say it. So we talked a couple of weeks ago. First, the church is one. It's one thing. Right, the church is one. First and foremost, it's this one people of God with whom God has made this covenant. God's in a covenantal relationship with this one people, the one body of Christ, the one bride. It's one thing. Great. But then it's very easy, like we talked about, it's very easy for us to then say, well, yeah, I'm in this relationship with Jesus. I'm part of his people. So now I'm just going to kind of do whatever I think that means. It's like, no, there actually is a visible concrete structure that's given to us. God had a visible concrete structure in the Old Testament. Jesus kept the exact same structure in the New Testament. And the church carried that on from the very beginning. One of those visible elements is, as we talked then last week, is what we call the apostolic nature of the church. Jesus gave to the church leaders. Jesus continues to lead the church. He continues to guide the church, but he continues to lead to God to shepherd the church through those he has appointed as leaders. This is what we call the apostolic succession. This is what we can now call bishops and popes. Jesus continues to lead and guide his church, his people, through them. This is why we asked that very important question, a very important question last week, which is when it comes to my faith, when it comes to the church, Am I just following my own idea? Am I just kind of doing my own thing and figuring out what I think's right, what I think's true, what I think it should be like? Or am I entrusting myself to this thing that was left to us by Christ himself? Am I entrusting myself to the leaders that Jesus himself gave to us? So we've talked, this is again, the oneness of the church, the apostolicity of the church, but today we want to focus on one more thing, which is the Catholicity. The church is also Catholic. Just like the church being one and the church being apostolic, that's something to be loved and cherished and revered. Also that the church being Catholic is something to be loved and cherished and revered. The thing though is, what does Catholic mean? Let's ask it a different way. What do you think of? What do people think of when they hear the word Catholic? Typically, they just go, oh, that's one more brand of Jesus loving people, right? You have Methodists, you have Presbyterians, you have Lutherans, you have Baptists, you have Evangelicals, Pentecostals, oh, and then there's Catholics. It's just one more thing. It's just a different brand of loving Jesus. Okay. Take religion out of it for a second, though. What does the word mean? Universal. Wow, crushing it. You guys are on top of things today. It actually comes from which language? Man, you guys are getting good. It actually comes from Greek, my favorite language. It's actually two Greek words smushed together, kata and holos. And then we get the word Catholic just from this transliteration of the Greek word. Kata means according to, holos means the whole. So you smush them together and the word means according to the whole. And then sometimes, we'll translate it as universal. Okay. So why do we call the church that? The church has had a lot of names. Like you go to the Acts of the Apostles, the very first thing that the church was called was just the way. Capital W, the way of Jesus. Great. Early on, they were also called Christians. We're told them that in the Acts of the Apostles as well. They're in Antioch. These people, the people of God, were also called Christians. Okay, there's another name. But why Catholic? Why very early on? We're talking literally the first generation of these people. Why did they start to describe themselves, describe the church as kataholos? It's because, thanks for asking, it's because very early on they had to say, we need to distinguish ourselves from people that do not believe the whole of the faith. We are part of, we labor ourselves according to the whole of what Jesus gave to us. Because there are others who do not. There are other groups who do not take on the fullness of what Jesus gave to his people. Okay, so it's very, very important then. It's just a historical reality. It's not even like, it's just a historical reality. In particular, we're talking, this is the very first generation. Jesus dies, he rises from the dead. Then there's this first generation of people that love Jesus. Already in that first generation, there were people that denied things about what these people believed. In particular, they denied that Jesus was God, which is kind of a big one. So it's like, we were like, no, according to the whole, kataholos, Jesus is God. They also some people denied that Jesus was fully human. Others denied and said weird things about salvation. Others said weird things about the Trinity. So there's all these people believing in these strange teachings. Okay. So the church said, no, kataholos, according to the whole of what Jesus gave to us, this is what we believe. Also then, there was also strange worship going on. In particular, many people were denying, they're in the very first generation, that the Eucharist that they celebrated was Jesus' body and blood. And then thirdly, there were groups going around that said the apostles were very important, but their successors, we don't have to listen to them. Right, so they started to deny that the successors to the apostles, these people called bishops, had any authority to teach them or to lead them and guide them. So early on then, the OGs, right, we call them the original church, the original people of God, they began to describe themselves as kataholos. According to the whole of what Jesus gave to us, this is what we believe, this is what we profess. And so that's very important for us to recognize. Okay, very famous example of this then. We celebrated his feast day actually this past week. There was this guy, literally in the very first generation. His name was Ignatius, Saint Ignatius of Antioch. We call him. You ever heard that Bible story where Jesus takes a child and he places it in their midst and he says, "The greatest in the kingdom of God shall be like this child"? Familiar? Ring a bell? Okay. Tradition has it that child that Jesus placed in their midst was Ignatius. Okay, whether you believe that or not, which you need to believe because it's just true, Ignatius was then the bishop of Antioch. He learned the faith, though, from John. John the Apostle, one of the 12, as in John, the one that Jesus loved the most. Okay, that's who Ignatius learned this faith from. So that's a pretty good person to learn the faith from, so we can trust Ignatius and what Ignatius is about to teach us. While Ignatius was the bishop of Antioch, he was at the end of his life, Rome didn't like him, and so Rome came in and they said, "You're out, we're going to kill you." So they started shipping him off to Rome so they could execute him, so they could martyr him. On his way to Rome, very importantly, on his way to Rome, Ignatius writes 7 letters to 7 different towns in the area. You know how Paul wrote to the Romans, to the Ephesians, people like that? Ignatius also wrote a letter to the Romans and to the Ephesians. He also wrote one to the Philadelphians, that's Greece, not America. And then he also wrote a letter to the people in Smyrna, to the Smyrnians. This is very important what Ignatius says then to the Smyrnians, because again, he's addressing how there's all these other groups, very first generation. He says there's all these other groups running around, and they don't believe according to the whole of our faith. Ignatius writes this, and again, remember, this is Ignatius. Literally, this is the year 100. He learned everything from John the Apostle, the person Jesus loved the most. Okay. Ignatius writes this: avoid all divisions. Avoid all divisions. See that you follow your bishop and the priests as you would follow the apostles themselves. Let no one do anything connected with the church without the bishop. For wherever the bishop is, there the people should be as well. Just as wherever Jesus Christ is, there is the Catholic Church. Okay. This is the generation right after Jesus. And already they're beginning to see these divisions crop up and saying, no, we believe what the Catholic Church believes, this according to the whole of our faith. This is one example from the 7 letters that he writes, but over and over in these 3 letters, he hammers on 3 very predictable things. It's those same 3 things that we just talked about. He says there's a lot of people going around that don't believe that Jesus is God. Don't go along with that. He says there's a lot of people running around that don't believe the Eucharist is the body and blood of Jesus. Don't believe that. He says there's a lot of people running around that say you don't need your bishop. Just do your own thing. And he says that's not a thing. Just as wherever Jesus Christ is, there's the Catholic Church. Wherever the bishop is, that's where we should be. We have to be in union with him. Again, he uses this phrase Catholic Church, not just to describe a brand of church. He says this is the church, the one people of God that believes according to the whole of what has been given to us by Jesus Christ himself. Okay, so Catholic, it's more than a brand. So what he's also then saying is we see this today too, while there's plenty of other groups out there that have some of the parts of the church. They have the scriptures, right? They have baptism. And those are beautiful, good things. He says they don't have the fullness. They don't have the Catholic Church, the fullness according to the whole of what's been given to us by the Lord himself. Okay, where does the rubber meet the road on all this? For us, I had this concrete experience. It was several years ago. I was down in Wichita. Don't worry, it's nobody up here. You're all perfect up here. You know that. But I was talking to somebody, and they go, and this, it's never going to go well when they start off like this. "Father, I'm a Catholic." And I was like, "Okay, you don't need to tell me that loud. I'm a Catholic. I've always been a Catholic. I'm always going to be a Catholic." I go, "Good." And they go, "But," always a but "I don't know if I can get on board with some of that stuff the Catholic Church teaches." And I go, "But you're Catholic?" "I'm Catholic. I'll always be a Catholic, but I don't know if I can get on board with some of that stuff that the Catholic Church teaches." Which always makes me chuckle. That always makes me chuckle because it's like, well, what do you think the word Catholic means? Anyway, so we call these people cafeteria Catholics. Have you ever heard that before? It's like you walk into the cafeteria to the buffet line and you're just like, I like that, don't like that, I'll take that. You just kind of pick and choose what you want, which again is funny because the word Catholic, we literally started using the word Catholic in the 1st century to say we don't do that. We don't pick and choose what we like or make things up. We just, according to the whole of what's been given to us, that's what we believe. But anyway, still call themselves Catholic. It's very, very funny to me. In particular then, what did this person mean? They're like, I believe some of the things that the church teaches, but just not all of them. But like I believe in some things, like, I need to get baptized, first communion, confirmation, but I don't want to get married in the church. I don't think that's important. When was the last time you went to confession? Oh, I don't go to confession. Oh, okay. So there's not all the worship there. And then, I shouldn't have brought this one up. They had some things to say about what bishops and popes do, and they're like, I don't think bishops should be in charge. We should elect our own leaders. It's like, okay. So what is this? This is what we call cafeteria Catholics. We just kind of pick and choose, and all of a sudden we start falling right back into what we talked about last week, which is, I'm going to follow my own idea of what I think this thing should be. I'm going to follow my own idea and just invent my own thing. Okay. Catholic's not just a brand, though. It's not just a certain flavor of church. It's not even just our parish. It's not just, well, here's the Catholic Church in Lyons, then there's a Baptist Methodist, just pick church. As long as we're all loving Jesus, we're all the same thing. It's not brands. Catholic, again, is saying, I'm part of that one apostolic church founded by Jesus. The church that accepts and receives everything, the fullness of what the Lord gave to us. Again, go back to that original question from last week. Am I just going to follow my own idea of the church, or am I actually going to entrust myself to what's been given to us since the beginning? So just a very simple way that we can practice our Catholicity this week. I just want to take just a few things. One from each of those three categories that Ignatius and the early church loved to harp on. First, then, the teachings of the church. Now, don't raise your hand, because again, you're all perfect. We all know that. But maybe there's one or two teachings of the church where you go, I don't know if I believe that. Okay. Your homework for the week is to use this tool called Google, and I want you to go learn about that thing. Go dig into it. The beautiful thing about the church is there's a reason for everything the church teaches. A billion reasons for everything the church teaches. Go try to find those out. And if you're getting stuck, let me know. You know me. I would love to send you more resources than you could ever want on any question you have. My email is on the cover of the bulletin. Just let me know. I will help you out. But why do we do this? Because again, the church teaches things for us so that we can know clearly. Sometimes we don't want to know what the church teaches because we love being ignorant of things, and all of a sudden we're going to be responsible if we know something. But let's learn. Let's figure out what it is that the church teaches and why. Second thing, what's the second thing Ignatius harps on? The worship of the church, the sacramental life of the church. Okay, lots of things we can do here. We have Mass Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday during the week. Maybe you go to Mass extra once a week. Oh, there's this little box over here. It's called the confessional. You could go to confession. That's a way we practice our faith. There's this thing we do on Mondays called the adoration, right? Adoration of the Blessed Sacrament from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. You could find time to come and to worship the Lord. Also, maybe, again, sacramentally, maybe your marriage does need to get blessed in the church. Let me know. One of my favorite things to do is help you with that. Let me know. I'd love to help you get your marriage blessed in the church. We'll pray the Our Father in Latin together, just as a way to make you uncomfortable right now. But that's, again, how do we express the universality, the Catholicity of our faith? So that's the second thing. Find a way to engage the sacramental life. Thirdly, then, third's what? The bishop, our leaders, good. The third thing, then, is very concretely, like I've mentioned the past couple of weeks, we're about to start our part of this diocesan capital campaign. Right? So that's our way, in a simple way, a simple gesture, a concrete gesture for us to unite ourselves with our bishop. Again, we're not just our own thing here in Lyons. We're part of a much broader church called the diocese, and then part of the much broader church called this universal church all throughout the world. So this is just one concrete way. So you can begin to pray about as a family how you're going to participate in that. Again, three little things, each of those areas. The point, though, being Catholic is more than just a brand. I'll go to my grave saying that. Being Catholic is more than just a brand. It's not all the same thing as any other brand of Jesus loving. Catholic, from the beginning, was used to describe those people that believe all of it, all that the Lord has given to us. And thanks be to God that even here in our parish, here in the center of Kansas, small little community here, we are the Catholic Church. It's all here. We have everything that the Lord gave to us. And thanks be to God, we can embrace it all.